Engineer Gold Mines is focused on the exploration and development of the historic high-grade Engineer Gold Mine situated 32 kilometers southwest of Atlan, British Columbia. Engineer Gold Mines is fully permitted for surface and underground exploration with the drill program now underway. Engineer Gold Mines Limited trades on the TSX Venture Exchange, symbol EAU. For more information, please visit us at engineergoldmines.com.
Welcome to the Goddard Report. Comments made on the Goddard Report and TalkDigitalNetwork.com are an expression of opinion only. Here is Jim Goddard.
My guest is Jordan Bateman, Vice President of Communications and Marketing for the Independent Contractors and Business Association in British Columbia. His website, icba.ca. Welcome back to the show, Jordan.
Thanks for having me, Jim.
In just a few short days, British Columbians will go to the polls, although they're indicating 700,000 plus have asked for mail-in ballots, and people are crowding the advance polls, so it may be 2 weeks or more before we actually know the official results. And the reason they count the mail-in ballots 2 weeks after the polls close is they want to make sure you haven't voted twice. So that's a good move.
Yeah, that's fair.
Now, Jordan, let's take a look party by party what's best for business. Let's take a look at the ruling minority NDP right now. Are their policies going to be good for BC recovery from the COVID shutdown?
Bluntly, no. And there's a few problems with the NDP government. First of all, they like to make hay that they balanced the budget before COVID. Most observers would point out that they actually blew through a $2.5 billion surplus left behind by the previous government. They've kind of rode the coattails of a lot of hard work by the BC Liberals over 16 years to get the economy to where it was. And they also increased invented 23 different taxes, increased the tax burden by $6 billion, increased spending. So, the NDP certainly are no fiscal management gurus. The big concern we have is they are so willing to reward their friends and insiders and so eager to do so that they're actually going to drive up the costs of many items for the average taxpayer. You just need to look at construction. So, building infrastructure, roads, hospitals, bridges, schools, that's going to be a major part of the economic recovery no matter which party gets elected. The problem we have is that the NDP government wants to sole source those contracts to their buddies in the building trades unions. Those building trades represent only about 15% of the overall workforce in construction. So you're cutting out 85% of construction workers, you're cutting out 82% of trades apprentices, and that's not going to do anything except reduce the competition for these contracts and drive up prices. The extra bureaucracy, they have to have a government agency employing these people, the extra risk involved, it drives up the prices considerably. And we've already seen it on a number of these little extensions or expansions of Highway 1 east of Kamloops. We're seeing cost overruns of about 30% because the provincial government has sole sourced these to their building trades unions. The Cowichan Hospital, Partnerships BC, which is a government agency, put out a document showing that, the cost of that hospital will be bloated by about a quarter because of community benefits agreements. And all this money starts to add up. So instead of stretching your infrastructure dollar as far as you possibly can and try to get as many schools built and as many, social housing units built and as many roads built as possible and trying to do, just try to stretch that dollar to get maximum value, you're actually cutting it by 25 to 35%. You're actually, it just disappears into this black hole of union coffers and bureaucracy, and that's definitely bad news for taxpayers. And, it's going to cause problems. The NDP in 2017 promised that half the portables in Surrey schools would be gone by now. They've actually failed on that promise. They didn't just fail in getting rid of the portables. There's a third more than were there when they made the promise. So they've gone the wrong direction on that. They've only delivered something like 5% of the social housing units, 114,000 social housing units they suggested. So instead of stretching dollars to their maximum amount, which needs to be the baseline goal of every government in this pandemic recovery. The NDP are just going to keep rewarding their friends and insiders.
The NDP's promising to send $500 to individuals, $1,000 a family directly deposited in your bank account. What about the homeless people who don't have bank accounts? How does that help them?
Well, and it's also only if your family makes, as a household income of less than $120,000 a year. $125,000 sounds like a lot, but you start doing the math. If you're a teacher married to a cop, or if you're a firefighter married to a Teamster, you're not going to be eligible for those, for that help. So a lot of people will be very surprised, I think, when their check doesn't materialize in their bank account because, John Horgan's made the window so tiny. John Horgan, I think it was Vaughn Palmer and Adam Sterling and Victoria, CFAX Radio, they got a hold of this document that John Horgan's campaign team put out, basically us versus them language, how candidates should talk, and it's all about dividing British Columbians. There's the haves and the have-nots. It's us versus them. And that's really corrosive long term. And, this has been a frustrating campaign to watch unfold because, number one, everyone's more concerned about the pandemic. Number two, since the day he called this election, 3,500 British Columbians have been diagnosed with a new COVID infection. By the time we actually get the ballots counted and get a government certified and then get a cabinet sworn in, that number is going to be around 7,000 or 8,000 British Columbians who have been infected with COVID and who's, didn't receive the full support that maybe they could have received if government had continued to operate. So I've been really frustrated with John Horgan's lack of telling the truth about his motives for this election, his lack of telling the truth about his record, and his, very divisive us versus them language.
We'll take a look at the Liberal platform right after this.
Value from success. Growth in discovery. Golden Arrow Resources is a well-funded gold-copper exploration company with proven management and prospective properties in Chile, Argentina, and Paraguay. Golden Arrow trades on the Toronto Venture Exchange, symbol GRG, on Frankfurt, symbol G6A, and the OTCQB, symbol GARWF. For more information, visit us at goldenarrowresources.com or call Sean at 778-686-0135.
Media recognition from Bloomberg, Reuters, recycling trade publications, patented process for 100% recovery of critical metals, including cobalt, lithium, nickel, manganese, aluminum. American Manganese is focused on recycling lithium-ion batteries for electric vehicles. American Manganese trades on the TSX Venture, AMY, the US, AMYZF, and Frankfurt 2AM. For more information, visit AmericanManganeseInc.com or phone me, Larry Ray, at 778-574-4444.
Welcome back. We're speaking with Jordan Bateman. Jordan, I think the primary promise made by the BC Liberals in this election is to eliminate the 7% provincial sales tax for 1 year and then move it to 3% in the second year to help the recovery. Would this be a good move to get BC business up and running again?
We believe it's probably the best move that a government can make right now. And, even though you have the other promise of $1,000 to certain folks from the NDP, the truth is this would help every British Columbian because virtually every British Columbian buys something at some point that is PST, has PST on it. And it would actually help employers and local governments too. So one of the things we're seeing in construction is our order books for 2021 are really starting to thin out. You're seeing slowness in tendering by government. You're seeing government of all levels, municipal and provincial. You're seeing investors, project builder or project managers, owners hesitating. They're not sure what's going to happen in 2021 economically. Are we going to have a vaccine? Is the economy going to continue to recover? Are we going to stagnate? What's going to happen? So they're not making those final investment decisions like they have previously. And companies' order books are starting to thin out. Well, if you suddenly take away a 7% PST on all those inputs for 1 year, a bunch of projects that maybe they're sort of 50-50 on, or a lot of projects that are kind of marginal, suddenly become a lot more attractive. And there is no doubt that you would spark a number of housing starts, a number of other construction projects. Further, local governments are not exempt from PST. They pay PST on all the things that we all pay PST on. And, that's fine. People say, well, local government, they can afford it. Except right now they can't. Local governments are struggling financially as well. Many of them still have not reopened to their full capacity because they can't, their tax base is basically stagnated. But again, if you're suddenly saving them 7% on a number of these inputs, maybe they can put more money into infrastructure. Maybe they can afford to reopen that community center. Maybe they can find ways to get things going. So it's one of these policies that, it's not as, sexy as, hey, $1,000 in my bank account. Woo! It's, a savings of a few dollars here and a few dollars there every time you shop. But, for the overall economy, it helps every British Columbian. And like I said, it'll get business and give local governments a fighting chance to pull themselves up off the map.
The Liberals promising to open ICBC, the provincial monopoly on auto insurance, up to competition. Is that a good move?
Yeah, that is a good move. I mean, look, I've said for a long time there's only, the biggest problem for ICBC is it's run by politicians. Insurance is an incredibly difficult file to master. And you can't expect politicians who have never had any background in insurance to come in and know how to do it effectively. And we know this is the case because no government has ever managed ICBC properly. The 1970s NDP didn't set it up great. The 80s Socreds didn't run it great. The 90s NDP certainly didn't do a good job with ICBC. The past 16 years of the BC Liberal government wasn't great on ICBC. And we're seeing again, massive increases for young drivers. David Eby flip-flopping, essentially lied to folks that he wasn't going to go to no-fault insurance. He's done that. He's going to that model now. It doesn't matter what government or what ideology or what stripe the politician is. They're not good at it because it's such a difficult thing to master. So better to open it up to competition, give British Columbians a fighting chance to get a better rate, give British Columbians the opportunity to bundle insurance products, and give us a chance to find cheaper rates. The places in Canada where there's competition on insurance, in a regulated market to make sure there's no gouging and things like that, those are the places where car insurance is the cheapest. And at a time where every dollar is going to count for a lot of families, this is a good promise to go with.
We'll have more with Jordan Bateman when we take a look at the green platform.
Bateman Resources Limited is a gold exploration company with significant projects in British Columbia and the Yukon, trading on the TSX Venture Exchange, symbol ABN, and the OTCQB, symbol ABNAF. Surrounded by world-class gold deposits and mines, Bateman's 23,000 hectares Forest Kerr Gold Project is located in the heart of the Golden Triangle in northwestern BC. For more information, visit us at batemanresources.com.
Don't miss out. Stay informed. Receive the HowStreet.com weekly recap with thought-provoking podcasts, radio, and articles delivered to your inbox. Sign up for the HowStreet.com weekly recap on our homepage at HowStreet.com.
Welcome back. We're speaking with Jordan Bateman. What's your impression of what the Greens are offering British Columbians?
Well, the Greens, what can we say about the Greens? They have nothing in there about labor policy. At least they, went away from their crazy property transfer tax, massive increases that was in their last platform. But their platform is very thin on helps for employers. It's a lot of nebulous things, a lot of talking about tech, a lot of retraining workers who dare to work with their hands, in resource development or in construction, as if that's some sort of, bad way to make a living. I don't love it. They're very naive when it comes to how long it would take to electrify the economy. And I'm not sure how they plan to, electrify the economy when, solar and wind isn't great on a broad scale across BC, and when they're fighting Site C as well. So the Greens are kind of naive, as usual, when it comes to economic policy. It's hard to take them I'm not sure if it's partly they don't have the resources to invest in actually thinking out these policies properly. The new leader's only been in place for a couple of months, and, they're really in a fight to save the 2 seats they have, let alone try to expand. But there is not much there if you're an employer or a job creator.
And, of course, they want mobility pricing on cars.
Yeah.
And for most British Columbians, if you don't live in Vancouver or Victoria, there isn't a lot in the way of public transit, is there?
No, and look, I'll go even further. Mobility pricing would be incredibly punitive to people who live in the suburbs or people who live in rural areas. And here's why. Yet, transit's more of an option, obviously, in the urban areas. So that's one piece. The second piece is just the way our province is developed. Vancouver, Burnaby, New Westminster, some of the oldest communities in British Columbia, they predominantly developed at a time where there were no environmental regulations. So when they looked around and said, oh, during the Depression, let's fill in half of False Creek so we have more land, they just did it. If they saw a stream, they paved over it. Like, there was no environmental regulations back then. That is not the case for the way that Surrey, Langley, Abbotsford, Coquitlam, Delta are developing now. There's the Agricultural Land Reserve, which cuts out huge swaths of those municipalities, keeps them from being developed. And what it means is that, whereas a person in Vancouver can go a couple blocks to their local store, or, they don't even need to drive, they can walk or take transit or whatever, you don't have the same option when you have to cross a huge swath of farmland between, say, Walnut Grove in Langley and Brookswood. It's the same municipality, but that's a long way in between. So it gouges and overcharges suburban drivers. Mobility pricing is one of those things that, perhaps in a very confined downtown space where lots of people are trying to get into, maybe it would work. I don't think it would work in downtown Vancouver, for example, because, again, there would be an inequity. And it would end up, I think, driving a lot of services and companies out of downtown Vancouver. But this idea of just charging per kilometer is one of the most regressive anti-suburban, anti-family, and anti-rural taxes you could possibly bring in. The Greens are all for it, of course. They're gung-ho on it. The NDP, oddly enough, have not ruled it out. Joy McPhail was commissioned by TransLink to do a study on it, and John Horgan said on the Mike Smith show this week that he wouldn't necessarily kill it. He'd want to see what TransLink proposes. Well, let's just be clear. This would be an incredibly punitive tax and not one that we should be pondering for British Columbia.
And how honest is a report going to be if it's given to a former leader of the party?
Yeah, well, that's exactly it. I mean, you're talking about one of the NDP's key mover and shakers, one of their icons from the 90s. It's hard to take.
Well, Joy and Jenny.
It's hard to take at face value. Yeah. The NDP aren't interested in it when they, give it to one of their great heroes.
Well, I was going to say Joy and Jenny were the official opposition because there were only 2 NDP members.
Yeah, exactly. So you're exactly right. Everyone's spider sense on this file is starting to tingle. The NDP have a huge tax problem, right? Like, they can't help themselves. They love to spend money, and they're going to overspend on a bunch of things. So they're going to be looking for ways to jack up taxes. And, because of the way their recovery plan is structured, the economy is not going to come back as quick as it would if you cut the PST. And, this may be the 24th tax they invent. Who knows? We certainly, in the last election, had no idea they were going to bring in an employer health tax or jack up a number of other taxes. But it's very hard for me right now to take much of what John Horgan says at his word, because this whole election is built on, a number of excuses he's given, none of which are the truth, which is he called this election because his, political operatives told him he could win it if he called it now. And, when you birth a campaign in a lie and misleading statements, and excuses, it's hard for anyone to really take anything else that's said seriously from that point.
Is the employer health tax in British Columbia going to impede the province's recovery?
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty obvious, right? Like, if you make it more expensive to, hire a worker, that's going to impede progress. This is going to be an ongoing problem for a long time. Payroll taxes are shown to constrict job growth. Well, we're at a time where we've just lost thousands and thousands of jobs. Construction, for example, we had almost 250,000 British Columbians who worked in construction before this recession hit. We've lost 30,000 of them, but 13% of the workforce is now gone from construction. So those are big holes. Like, that's a lot of men and women out of work. And, we'd love to, our construction companies, we're not responsible for all these job losses, but we would love to bring them back. But if there are no projects being built, how do you do that? Construction workers actually have to be building something. So these are the issues that we're grappling with, and, our members of which we have about 2,500 members and clients, they're saying we would love to hire more folks, but the wage subsidy is disappearing, or it's being changed in a way that will severely limit what companies can get access to it, and our workers, and there isn't any orders coming in. So what are we supposed to do? That will be the fundamental question the NDP will face over the next few years if the polls are true and they hold this lead. Well, I guess it doesn't even matter. Whatever stripe of government it is, they're going to have to figure out how to deal with this.
Some of the policy experts I've talked to say infrastructure is the way to go if you want to bring back the economy, because it'll help the movement of goods if you have more efficient highways and bridges. And the Lower Mainland, I saw a study as well, says it still should have 2 or 3 more bridges if you want to move traffic efficiently.
Oh, compare us to Portland. Like, if you've ever been to Portland, that river is covered in bridges. And it goes back and forth, back and forth. Like, great. Like, that makes great sense, right? Like, why do we use the Fraser River and Falls Creek as like barricades, like the Berlin Wall, right? It doesn't make any sense. So the more accesses you can have across, the better. Even if we do all transition to electric vehicles, those still use roads. Even if transit radically increases, you can use some of that lane space for SkyTrain and light rail and other options. So yeah, let's build the infrastructure we're going to need for 100 years, not build it with 10-year or re-election windows in mind.
Jordan, anything else you wanted to add? Apparently we're not going to be going to a federal election, at least today.
Yeah, apparently. We will, we'll see. Who knows what tomorrow will bring with the federal government, but hopefully, saner heads have prevailed. I just over and over again think to myself, we're in the middle of a second wave. Dr. Bonnie called it a second wave on Monday. Even in British Columbia, which has some of the better numbers in the country. We are preoccupied with a public health crisis. We're preoccupied with the fact that we can't go watch our kids play sports, with the fact that our kids are in school now. We're trying to, lots of folks are trying to find jobs or trying to deal with the new reality on the ground in their workplaces. We're busy. And on top of this, John Horgan very selfishly came in and said, I'm going to call an election because my job is more important than all of yours. That has been a problem from the start. I encourage everyone listening, get out and vote on Saturday the 24th. Polls are open 8 to 8. Let's make sure that our voice is heard. And please, when you go to the ballot box to vote, think of the job creators of small businesses. There are, the stats are shocking, right? The Business Council of BC says, hey, of every business that was open on January 1st, 2020, we think one of 4 will be out of business by December 31st, 2021. And, you start to do the math, right? Like, walk down your street, walk to your local shopping area and say, okay, which one of these 4 businesses is going to be out of business? And then think about the entrepreneur and the family who invested their life savings into that business and who'll be put way behind. Think of the people they employed and those families who'll be out of work. That is what this election is about. Standing up and making sure that the government or the party that has the best plan to renew the economy and keep people working and get people who are out of work back to work, that should be the key driving factor in this election. $1,000 bribes from politicians, those don't matter. Find the government that has a good child care plan. The truth is all 3 parties have very good child care plans. Find the government that wants to put folks back to work as quickly as possible, and from my analysis, that's the BC Liberals, and that's how I'll be casting my vote on Saturday.
Jordan, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thanks for having me.
My guest has been Jordan Bateman, Vice President of Communications and Marketing for the Independent Contractors and Business Association in British Columbia. His website, icba.ca. If you have any questions for Jordan or any of our other guests, you can send them to info@howstreet.com. Our YouTube channel is Talk Digital Network. Find us on Twitter at Talk Digital Net. We're also on Facebook. I'm Jim Goddard. Thank you for listening.
Comments made on the Goddard Report and TalkDigitalNetwork.com are an expression of opinion only. The Goddard Report is available online and mobile at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. The Goddard Report is a production of Howe Street Media Incorporated.